Good morning, welcome again to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie and we are going to do another in my series of landscape design. So today's video is going to be about irrigation and looking at the water that you have on your property. Once again, this is a site analysis video, the site analysis part of my landscape design, and we're only going to be looking at what we have. So as I'm looking at my property and looking at the irrigation that I have, look at your property and see what you have. This is a time to decide what you have and draw a map of it. We're going to draw a map after we're done with the video today and see what we have and how well it works, what doesn't work. So let's go look at my irrigation system and see what I have. So the first place I'm going to look is my clock. Now I have a Hunter clock. It's probably about 12 years old. It seems to work okay for my needs. And I have 6 stations on this clock. Let's look at it. Now I've changed things a little bit for the fall. My irrigation is off, so I'm no longer using my clock. But I do know which number goes to which area of my yard. Number 1 is my front yard. Number 2 is my drip system, which covers the front and my garden beds. Number 3 is part of my backyard. Number 4, these are rotors, and we'll go over that in just a little bit. Part of my backyard. Number 5 is a side yard, the spray heads, and it also covers part of the front yard. And then number 6 is the drip irrigation on my hill. So let's turn this back off because we're not going to mess with this until next spring. So off, there it is. Okay, there it's off. So anyway, yeah, we'll close this up and go outside and look at these different areas. So now we're not going to look at this area because I've shown this area in past videos. This is my irrigation shutoff area. So the irrigation box closest to us, that is where we turn on and off my water. It has a plastic ball valve in it that is probably going to need to be replaced. It's got a lot of give and play, and it'll probably break soon. The one closest to the street has the city shutoff valve on it. The next area to look is my valve boxes. Now we have 2 different kinds of valves here. The first one right here is for drip irrigation. You can tell because it has a filter here. It's got a pressure reducer. Otherwise, the rest of the valve looks the same. Every drip irrigation system should have a pressure reducer and a filter to have it operate correctly. This goes to the spray heads in my front yard because it does not have the pressure reducer and the filter. So now that we know that we have an area that can be used for drip and is actually being used for drip, we can look at the size of that area, go to an irrigation store and talk about possibly expanding that, or see if we need to convert this side also to drip irrigation. So now we can look at my second valve. I have 4 stations here. This is in my backyard, and this looks a little bit different because it's a little bit older. This area right here is where I have my drip irrigation system. So I do have 1 more area for drip irrigation, and the rest are for my rotors in the backyard. Other than I think it's this one right here. It's for the spray heads in the side yard that go to the front. Now let's go look at the areas that I have and what spray heads I have. Now this area is my dog run. It has a lot of grass. I liked having grass here with dogs because it didn't become a mud bath. Now, depending on what I do with this area, I may need to change out the irrigation system. So what I do have is I have rotors. There's one right around in this area, and it does not go past where I am standing. You know, this is as far as it turns. And then I have 2 more heads that cover the hill. And because the guy who redid my irrigation system, he did not add any of the drip irrigation to this part of my hill. It's not ideal. And if I am going to change it, I would need to be able to get up into that massive vegetation and add a drip system. On this side, I have spray heads. They're not working correctly right now. They're right up against the house, which is not ideal. And this is an area, that maybe could be changed. Can I change this area? That's a good question. Can I cap the spray heads and just put gravel here? That's an idea. So we'll have to think about that. But we'll have to talk to somebody at an irrigation store and see if it's possible to cap these heads and then only leave 3 heads in a small area on the other side. Now we have my backyard. This little bed up against the house has no irrigation in it. The irrigation in this area is covered by the spray head that's right opposite from the gate. And as I said, it doesn't go past, it doesn't turn past the gate. So whatever overhead spray happens, like mist, it's kind of a mist that hits this shrub. This shrub seems to have done well with that because there's also another head inside this bed right here. And it does not hit the house, but it does hit this tree right here. So that is also not an ideal situation. It would be much better to have this whole bed on a drip system. So we're going to have to look at that and see what the possibilities are with that. The rest of my backyard has several rotors that seem to work pretty good. They are not designed the best. I'll link a video up at the top, which Alex Grover from Grow How looks at my irrigation system and notes all the different areas where it's not designed in the best way possible. But it has worked. So we'll see, once again, time and money, if there are things that need to be changed that can be changed. On my hill, as I noted, this area next to the dog run is watered by the irrigation from the top of the hill. The drip irrigation starts right about at the trunk of that aspen tree and spans the hill. It's netafin. So they're just drip tubes, that are lining the hill that have holes in them. And those end, well, you can almost see, let's see if I can, in the area where I'm losing you can pretty much maybe see what the tubes look like up there. We'll head up there and show you. But they end at the cherry tree at the top of the hill. So this area over here really actually gets no water other than at the bottom of the hill. Any water that it gets is leaching from the garden beds. That's the only thing I could think of that's keeping the plants up there alive. Because the spray heads only spray about 2 or 3 feet up this hill, and that's from the lawn. This garden bed over here does not have any irrigation in it. Whatever overspray we get from the lawn is what keeps this watered, other than this hydrangea right here. I have a little bit of drip irrigation that goes to the front bed in front of my house, and I stretched that back to cover here. My garden beds are covered by the same netafin that's at the top of the hill, and these have worked beautifully. I've loved these until, they are 12 years old, and a lot of the holes are clogged, so I did have to tap into them with the little drip sprayers, which is not ideal because the pressure just isn't great when you do that. But to water the beds. So the drip irrigation in my garden does not work. It really needs to be redone. I really do not know how this rosemary is getting watered. There might be, maybe a little bit of there's really no overspray from the garden beds. So somehow this rosemary is getting along with very little water, and it's very happy. The junipers that I'm going to cut back today up here really get very little to no water. Then there's my peach trees. I stretched the irrigation from, you can see where it is right here. This is the last place where we get irrigation. Those irrigation hoses are spread all the way down the hill. I stretched one over to, it circles around these trees, so that's where they get water. And we've got my peach tree, which I still have not pruned off. I'll prune that in a little bit. And then my compost piles, and we're going to go over compost a little bit later. I also add, well, actually, when I had the system installed, I had them install a spray head, a drip spray head that covers these two compost bins. This compost bin does not get any water. It's my storage bin. It's a place where I collect all my stuff. And then we're going to go over it when I do my compost video. These two get constant water on them so that they can compost down really quickly and easily. So here is what the irrigation line looks like. Now we do have a serious issue here. This irrigation system was put in before I planted this cherry tree. And as you can see, the roots are growing all over the place. But there is a break. We have a break that was caused by these roots. So I've got to go back in here and redo this area. So that's another thing that needs to be redone from this irrigation system. So it's one thing you really need to think about when you're putting in your irrigation system. Where are the trees going to be planted? Are roots going to be disturbing your irrigation system? And just there's a lot of other questions that you need to ask. Here we are in my front yard. We've got the same Netafin drip irrigation system that's in my backyard. And it is 12 years old also, which means some of these hoses are probably clogged too. So what we need to do is we need to go through, in the spring and possibly replace the hoses on this side. Let me show you where they're connected to. This is where we used to have an irrigation head, and when I had my system redone, they attached the drip irrigation to this area. Then up at the top of this hill, they connected it again to a second area where we had an irrigation head. And then they pushed it under the fence, and it goes up and waters my garden beds at the top of the hill. Now, having it water up a hill and this amount of garden beds is not an ideal situation. I've always had pressure issues at the top of the hill in my garden beds. What I'd like to do is see if we can switch out the valve that is non-drip irrigation over here to a drip irrigation valve and just possibly eliminate all the lawn. That way we can efficiently water my entire front yard. I really don't like mowing the lawn. I think it's a waste of space. So that might be a possibility. Now that I've gone through my yard and done a quick analysis on what I have, what works, what doesn't work, and the possibilities for change, I'm going to go draw myself a map that I can take to an irrigation store and talk to them a little bit once my design is coming together a little bit more, and ask them what is possible to change. Kind of look at the costs to it. That will help drive some of my design decisions. So go out and look at your yard. Draw yourself a map of where your irrigation is, what you have, and see what works and what doesn't work. If you like these videos, they are going to be continuing all throughout the winter. We're going to cover all the different aspects of design. Subscribe, like my videos, share them with others, and let's enjoy this design adventure together. So go and enjoy yourself and have a wonderful garden adventure.